Fired. Just like that, a whole career put in jeopardy because of one single unprofessional moment. This isn't just some random headline. It is a huge reminder that in pretty much any profession, how we act is always under a microscope. The rules that shape our careers, they're built on a foundation of ethics, of trust, and yeah, public perception. So, welcome to our deep dive. Today, we're jumping headfirst into the really important and, let's be honest, often confusing world of professional ethics and conduct. Getting a handle on the difference between these two and how it all plays out in the real world is absolutely essential for building a career that's not just successful, but respectable and long-lasting. Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to untangle the big one, ethics versus conduct. Then we'll take a peek inside the actual rule books of some major professions. After that, we'll get into the anatomy of misconduct. What happens when things really go sideways. Then we'll bring it all into the here and now, looking at professionalism in the virtual world. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the top takeaways you need to know. Right, let's get down to the fundamentals. You hear these two terms, ethics and conduct, thrown around all the time, sometimes like they're the same thing, but they're not. And that difference is absolutely critical. So let's ask it plainly. What is the real difference between a code of ethics and a code of conduct? It sounds simple, right? But nailing this down is the key to understanding everything else we're going to talk about. So a code of ethics is really the big picture. Think of it as the why. It's your moral compass, your North Star. It's written in broad strokes. It's aspirational, built on huge values like honesty, integrity, and fairness. It sets the whole vibe for a profession. Now, a code of conduct. That's the what. This is where the rubber meets the road. It takes all those big, lofty ethical ideas and turns them into specific, concrete rules for what you do day to day. It's way less about philosophy and much more about direct, black and white, enforceable guidelines. This table really lays it all out, doesn't it? The code of ethics is focused on values, it's broad. And if you break it, well, you're looking at things like reputational damage. But the code of conduct is all about specific actions and rules. And this is the part you really got to hear. Violations here often lead to formal, official disciplinary actions. One shapes the culture, the other makes sure you follow the rules. I love this quote from Ellen Carpe, a project manager, because it just nails it. Ethics are the guiding principles. Professional conduct is the set of actions that comes from those principles. Simple, direct, and a perfect way to think about it. All right, let's do a quick check-in. Time for a question. Which of these best describes a code of conduct? Is it A, aspirational moral values, B, specific rules for day-to-day actions, C, broad philosophical principles, or D, guidelines for navigating complex dilemmas? What do you think? If you chose B, you are spot on. A code of conduct is all about those specific, practical rules that spell out exactly what you can and cannot do. So if you remember one thing, remember this. Ethics guide, conduct governs. Okay, now that we've got that foundation laid, let's actually crack open the rule books for some pretty high-stakes professions and see how this works in the real world. Let's start with law. The American Bar Association's model rules are no joke. They are incredibly detailed. But two of the absolute pillars are Rule 1.1 on competence, basically you have to know what you're doing, and Rule 1.6 on confidentiality. And that's not just a friendly suggestion. It is a sacred duty to protect your client's information. Now let's switch gears to computing. The ACM's code is pretty fascinating because its very first principle is to contribute to society and human well-being.
See, that shows a focus that goes way beyond just the client to think about how technology impacts everybody. It also includes really important principles like avoiding harm and just being honest.
And then there's finance. The CFA Institute is absolutely laser focused on one thing: trust. Standard ID couldn't be clearer. No dishonesty, no fraud, no deceit. I mean, when you're managing other people's money, integrity isn't just a nice to have, it is the entire foundation of your job. So, how does this actually play out? Well, the CFA handbook gives us the story about a guy named Sasserman, an investment officer. He has a few too many drinks at lunch, comes back to the office, and his colleagues can tell he's intoxicated. His judgment is clearly impaired. Now, this isn't about his private life, it's a direct violation of professional conduct because it hits his competence, and that's a huge problem. All right, let's test that idea. According to the ABA rules we just talked about, when is a lawyer allowed to reveal confidential client information? Is it A, to win a big case, B, to prevent a reasonably certain death, C, to tell a juicy story to their friends, or D, to help out with a minor crime? The correct answer here is B. Rule 1.6 actually allows a lawyer to break confidentiality to prevent a reasonably certain death. And this is a perfect example of how these codes are so much more than just a list of don'ts. They're frameworks for weighing really heavy, competing moral duties. In this case, your duty to your client versus your duty to prevent extreme harm to someone else. So, we've seen the rules. Now let's get into what happens when those rules get broken. This is where the idea of misconduct really comes into play. So, what even is employee misconduct? Well, at its very core, it's any action that either violates company policy or just shows a deliberate disregard for standards. But the key phrase here is that it erodes trust. That's the real damage misconduct does. It breaks that fundamental trust between an employer and an employee. And look, not all misconduct is created equal. It's really helpful to think about it on a kind of spectrum. You've got minor stuff like being late all the time. Then it escalates to serious misconduct, things like bullying. Gross misconduct is the worst of the worst. We're talking theft, fraud. And of course, today we have a whole new category: digital misconduct, like cyberbullying or causing a data breach. Let's make this real. Imagine Robert, a sales manager. He decides to haze a new hire by giving him a sales target that's literally impossible to hit. When the new guy, Samuel, fails, Robert just humiliates him in front of the whole team. Now, that's not just bad management, that's bullying. It absolutely destroys morale, it shatters trust, and it creates a toxic work environment. That's a textbook case of serious misconduct. So, how do companies deal with this? Well, most of them use what's called progressive discipline. It usually starts small, with a verbal warning. If the behavior doesn't change, it moves to a formal written warning. For bigger problems, it could lead to suspension, maybe a demotion, or all the way up to termination. The idea is to give people a chance to correct their behavior, but the consequences get more serious each time. Okay, another quick question for you. Using that framework, something like theft or physical violence, what would you call that? Is it A, minor misconduct, B, serious misconduct, C, gross misconduct, or D, digital misconduct? The answer is C, gross misconduct. And it's called gross for a reason. These are actions that are so severe, they just fundamentally break the employment contract. They cause immediate and significant harm, and they almost always justify immediate dismissal, even if it's a first offense. Now let's pull all these ideas into the world that we all work in right now, which for so many of us has become a lot more virtual. With the explosion of remote work, the rules of professionalism haven't just disappeared, they've changed. Trying to project a professional image and communicate clearly when you're not in the same room, well, that's a whole new ballgame with its own set of challenges.
So, how do you actually do virtual professionalism? This checklist is a fantastic guide. Dressing professionally, having a simple background, testing your tech, it all shows respect for your colleagues' time. And these last two are huge. Muting your mic when you're not talking is just basic politeness. And please avoid multitasking. It ensures you're actually there, engaged in the conversation.
Okay, let's see if that sunk in. What's a key way to show you're a pro in a virtual meeting? Is it A, doing other tasks to be more productive? B, using a wild and distracting virtual background? C, muting your microphone when you're not talking? Or D, wearing your comfy PJs? The answer, of course, is C. It might seem like such a small thing, but muting your mic is one of the easiest, most powerful ways to show respect. It cuts out all the background noise, the dog barking, the delivery guy, and it makes sure the person speaking can actually be heard. It's a tiny action that sends a huge signal that you're a considerate professional. Let's do one last one from the world of healthcare. If a nurse starts using their personal social media account to message a patient, what exactly are they violating? A, rules about being on time, B, professional boundaries, C, the dress code, or D, the documentation policy? The answer is B, professional boundaries. And this is a massive deal, especially in fields like healthcare. Using informal channels like texts or social media completely blurs the line between a professional relationship and a personal one. And that can compromise judgment, it can exploit a vulnerable patient, and it is a very, very serious ethical breach. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground, so let's bring it all home and boil it down to the most important points you need to remember. So here are your top takeaways. Number one, ethics are the why, the big values. Conduct is the what, the specific rules. Two, professional codes give us clear, enforceable standards to live by. Three, misconduct isn't all the same. It has different levels and escalating consequences. Four, professionalism is just as crucial on a video call as it is in a boardroom. And finally, and maybe most importantly, this isn't just about protecting your own job. It's about building trust with your clients, your colleagues, and with the public. And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. As our workplaces keep changing, with remote work and now AI becoming more and more common, the very definition of what it means to be a professional is shifting under our feet. So, what do these timeless principles of ethics and conduct really mean for you in your career today and tomorrow? Thanks for tuning in.